been a horticulturist for a long time. I got my degree from University of Wisconsin, Madison, back in the 80s, and worked at Chicago Botanical Garden for about 5 years, and then made my way back to Madison, where I was horticulture director at Olbrich Botanical Gardens. Anybody ever been to Olbrich? Any hands? Okay, just a handful of you. If you haven't, it's a great place to visit. I spent about 30 years there. I've been gone in July will be a full year. I've retired from Olbrich, but I haven't retired from gardening and horticulture because that's what I do. That's who I am. So I have a design and consulting business that I've had for almost as long as I've been at Olbrich. My biggest client, if you have ever heard of a firm called Epping Systems, they're in healthcare, records, maintenance. They're actually the biggest company in the world that does that now. Started in 1979. Anyway, they have this beautiful campus in Verona outside of Madison. And so I've done all the planting design work there with some landscape architects who do the really difficult stuff. I do the icing on the cake, the fun stuff. So if you ever get out there or in the area, stop in. It's an open campus, you can see it. It's a big place. So we use a lot of shrubs there because shrubs are not only beautiful and useful to create spaces, create rooms. If you have been to Olbrich, it's really a series of rooms that I created. In my early part of my career, I traveled to England and I fell in love with Sissinghurst and Hidcote, which are about the same size as Olbrich. Olbrich's like 16 acres. And I was the garden at Sissinghurst felt like it was 100 acres, even though it was 14, because it was all divided into these rooms. And when I started at Olbrich, it was grass, and more grass. It's a part of a 100-acre park, Olbrich Park. There's a little herb garden and a couple little gardens which we redesigned. But over the years, we got rid of almost all the grass except for a few areas where we actually use it. And then we created beautiful gardens, and we created the rooms with shrubs, small trees, to create those spaces. So anyway, we can all do that in our home gardens. I do it in my home garden, and we'll talk about some of this along the way. We'll get out of the sun here a little bit. And if you have questions along the way that are kind of more general, not like I have this spot in my garden, can you tell me what to put there? But if you have plants that you are wondering about for being narrow and tall or short and showy or whatever, you can ask those questions as we go. Yeah, so why don't we get started? We're going to head off in that direction, and then we're going to do a loop, and then we're going to spend most of our time actually over in the gardens to the, I don't know, is that east? Yeah. Okay, I saw this beauty earlier when I was wandering around. So this is a buckeye or horse chestnut, they're equal, named. So this is Osculus pavia, P-A-V-I-A, the red buckeye. What's so useful, it's a small-scale tree. This is a decent-sized one, and it grows in shade. And so I always find shade is the hardest niche to fill, to get height. Like especially with perennials, there's not many. There's like bugbane or Smith's fuga. There's a few things, but even shrubs, there's a limited number of shade-tolerant shrubs, small trees. Back there I see a pagoda dogwood that's in bloom. Behind you is both Viburnum lentago, the nattyberry viburnum. This middle one here, I can see it's got a little wider leaf to it we just talked about, and this is Viburnum prunifolium, the blackclaw viburnum here. So young plants, so there are some things, but there's not a lot. And so small-scale trees, this is one of my favorites. What's really interesting is this plant is a good rain garden plant. It can be inundated in water and survive that. I saw it down south in wild areas and such. So it can be in full sun too, but full shade as well.
Does it have to be a little up on a hillside, or can it sit its roots actually in the water?
I saw it standing in water. Yeah,
really?
Water. It's native farther south in the U.S. and I was shocked. I had no idea. So it's always good to travel about and see those things and learn.
Is it fast growing or?
I wouldn't say it's fast growing. It's not slow, but it's not super fast. Yeah. But it's in shade, so typically plants in shade tend to grow a little slower because they're just not getting as much, energy from the sun. But well worth. I have one in my garden. It's about almost maybe at the end of the season it'll be my height. I think it was 2 summers, not last summer, the summer before. Roy got home and said, "Hey, I'd like you to design some tree and shrub borders for us at Northwind." And I said, "Okay, if you pay me with plants, I'll do it." And so that's usually the deal we have. And so this whole area from the Katsura tree, which is the taller tree on the end of the shed there, all the way through, all the way around behind the well there. So this was, I don't know, a lot of grass here really when we first started. And so the idea was to create the tree and shrub border, and then Roy obviously has a few perennials around and he's going to fill in. He actually expanded the bed to include that tree now, so I need to tweak this a little bit. And we lost a couple plants along the way, and the rabbits, I see, were happily munching on them this winter too. But I just wanted to show you like what you start with, right? So it isn't always, and if we added the perennials right away, it obviously would be much showier. But he was like, there were some weeds in here, like I think there's some Canada thistle and stuff like that you want to get rid of before you start plugging perennials in. So, and they're busy doing other things. So this is kind of the idea. So I did a serviceberry here. They wanted to frame the view going out. The boxwoods already do that, coming in and out on the fence line. And then we wanted to add some height with apple serviceberry. So this guy here and there, which will get about 25 feet tall. There's an older one actually behind you that's not in the greatest shape, but it hopefully will come back. And then add different shrubs below. So I knew that this section was much shadier than that section, so I used different plants. So we did use some Japanese yew for some evergreen. 3 repeated there, 1, 2 here, then 2. I thought I had 3 there. Oh, there's 3 there. So there's some repetition that way. The oak leaf hydrangeas got munched to the ground here, here, there. So they were gonna, I think we lost one maybe here. We're gonna fill this space.
Do you know which yew it is?
That is Everlow, Everlow yew. Yeah, it's a good lower growing one. This is a spirea. This one is, I think it's Pinkalicious. So I don't use Japanese spireas in my designs anymore unless they're sterile cultivars, which this one is. There's been a big push to develop those, so there's more available now. I think Double Play, that Double Play series, which is a proven winners series, yeah, I think they claim that those are sterile, which is important because I've seen this plant like seed out everywhere in certain landscapes. So that, I don't know what happened to that guy or what that, and then when we move into this section, again, more shade. So I have hydrangea arborescens, which we talked about, the smooth hydrangea, the Annabelle. This is, I think, Ruby, the pink flowered one, which will get up about yay high, about 4 feet or so. Witch hazel back here. Then I have a series of, I don't know, 7 or more Viburnum lintago, the nannyberry viburnum. So they're going to just fill that whole space back there.
So they are pretty shade tolerant.
They are, yeah. And you can see how well they're doing, right?
Yeah, and they're flowering.
Yeah, they're more open when they're in shade, but they'll bulk up over time. And then again, they use more hydrangea here. And then when we get back over in this section, I put in, does anybody grow elderberry?
Yes.
A few of you?
Tried.
Have you ever grown the purple flowered one, or purple leafed, or the lime leafed, or gold leafed? Yeah, and you still have them?
No. Barely.
Yeah, they don't last, right? They're, yeah, 2-3 years. So, you know, whatever, if you're willing to replace them, they're interesting.
They're pretty.
They're pretty. This is one of our native elderberries. This is Sambucus pubens, the red, I don't know what the scarlet elderberry, I think. So this guy can get big. You can whack it back to the ground if you want. It won't flower that year, but it grows and it's super shade tolerant. Look at this thing. Already, it's put on this much growth already this spring. So it's not a, it's actually Sambucus pubens, P-U-B-E-N-S.
Is there a variety that grows in the sun?
It grows in the sun.
Oh, okay.
It'll grow in sun too. Yep. So it just lasts. So it would be good in that shade garden we were just in too, because you know they get fairly large.
We've been lucky with fleece flower, coming up and then going back to the ground and then coming up again.
In shade?
It's huge. Well, it's not as big, but it gets pretty big, like 6 feet tall.
Oh yeah.
Like a dark purple fruit. Is it a dark purple fruit? Like in a
Red, brilliant red.
Oh, brilliant.
However, the fruits are poisonous to us.
Except on Canadensis.
Right. Pubin's not, it's poisonous, but Canadensis is, right? You can make jam.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, right.
Great juice.
So beware of that.
Canadensis doesn't have a short life either. It
Okay.
starts to send out new stalks and just keeps going and going.
Okay, yeah. What's interesting, so if you do a deep dive into the taxonomy, some people say Canadensis is the same as Racemosa, some people split it out. All I know is those cultivars, whatever they are, they don't last. And they're beautiful, and I still use them once in a while, but I know that we'll have to replace them. Calycanthus, sweet shrub. Anybody know that plant? Okay, Calycanthus. You can grow in full sun, but it can grow in a lot of shade. This is ironwood. This is one of our native understory trees, Astraea virginiana. So I have some property in Iowa County, west of Madison, and it's natively growing in the woods there. Small scale, 25 feet, something like that in size. Then this whole section here, I put in hazelnut. The native hazelnut, which is Corylus Americana. So it'll sucker, right? It'll just fill this whole space. It'll fight it out with this Sambucus pubens that's here. Also Dervilla. It's called bush honeysuckle. An unfortunate name because everybody thinks honeysuckle, well, that's a weed. Why would you? I don't know how many people have said that to me when I put it in design. I said, no, it's Dervilla. It's not even related. But it's a good drought tolerant, shade tolerant plant. So there's a number of them in here, and they're just gonna like be a ground cover. And this section is not, you know, real important showiness wise, right? I mean, that is over there, but we want to take up space, and we want this to be nice, but we're not going to put perennials all in here. Roy will probably put sedges in, because Roy likes to put to cover the ground, and that's a good thing. These will cover the ground at some point.
How old are these?
They are about 3 years in the ground. I think this is their 3rd season in the ground.
Don't they get pretty darn tall? The hazelnut?
Something like that.
Okay.
6 feet, 7 feet, yeah. And then, you know, we didn't say anything about, so I said shrubs are lower maintenance. I didn't say shrubs are no maintenance, right? Nothing in life is no maintenance. So through pruning and on shrubs that sucker from the base, which is most, like Corylus or even the hazelnut or the elderberry or the sweet shrub, another one here behind me. You know, they produce new shoots each season. And what we do is about every year when a shrub is mature, we go in and we take out about 1/4 to 1/3 of the oldest canes, shoots, the oldest. So those are usually the biggest around, not always. And we don't lop them off up here. we go to the base of the plant, close to the ground as we can get, and we cut them off there. You don't want to cut them off at this height because what happens, we get all sorts of new growth coming off of that old growth. What we want to do, it's called rejuvenation pruning or renewal pruning. We want to encourage the plant to send up new shoots from the root system, from the base of the plant. So if you think about it, if we're taking out a quarter every year, in that shrub we'll never have a cane older than 4 years old. And you'd be like, the thing would be tiny. Well, it's not. They're full, they're vigorous. You get rid of the old wood, which is usually subject to, most subject to disease or insect problems, like boring insects like that old wood, that sort of thing. And we get all this young, new growth. So a lot of people will do just the opposite. And new shoots will come up and they'll take them out. They'll take them out of their shrub and they save all the old and old. And then what happens, they get bigger and taller. Common lilac's a perfect example. They'll get 15 feet tall. All the foliage is up here. All the flowers are up there. You can't even reach them, barely smell them, and they're leggy, right? You can see right through them. But if you renewal prune a lilac, they'll stay about 8 feet tall, maybe 10 feet tall, depending on the cultivar. They'll be full of foliage and flowers from the base right up to the top, and they'll be nice and full. So that's what we tend to do with the majority of shrubs. There are some exceptions, like rhododendron doesn't work. Burning bush, which you shouldn't even have anymore, doesn't work. It's an invasive species, so I say it. But it does on any shrub that sort of sends up suckers, like arrowwood viburnum, which talked about, was perfect for that. You could take out the bigger ones and always have this nice cadre of them.
You do that for 9-barks too?
9-barks, you do it too. And I say about a quarter to a third, and look at the shrub. Some shrubs maybe aren't as vigorously growing because they're getting more shade than they want to. So you might go a little less. But it's always good to take a little out every year. Lilacs, and even less like Palabin lilac or Miss Kim lilac, those really benefit from that renewal pruning. Again, they stay a good size. And when you do it, you might open up some space and holes in it. Don't worry about it. That's okay, because it allows sun. It's a little, awkward at first, but it allows sun to get down into the plant, which when those new shoots come up, they'll come up like 3-4 feet in one season, if you're doing it right.
How would you trim those over there? Like, which one would you start with?
Well, I wouldn't do any of those at this point. I would, again, I would wait until they're mature. So it might be another 3 years before we even do anything like that. I'll point it out on a shrub that we can see. These are all new, so it can't really speak of it.
Would you ever use like rubus? Like, I wanted to do some small low things, and I see like on the Possibility Place website they've got some different, not that you would grow for fruit, but
right,
blackberry relatives. And
I always look at, so the question is, could we grow, say, a raspberry, or there's ornamental, there's Rubus odorata, thimbleberry, beautiful thing with gorgeous little big flowers, pink. It's native to the western United States. I use it very sparingly. I use it more in a wild area where it can just run as far as it wants to and nobody cares. If it's in a garden and you want it to stay in this space, if you want it to stay in that space, you're going to be working at that every single year. It's going to be suckering all over, right? What else? Like Durvilla. Durvilla, again, you put it in a spot where you can allow it to sucker. If you have at home, or oftentimes businesses will have a sidewalk and then a foundation of a building. Perfect spot. I love sumac, but I don't use a lot of it in residential landscapes because there's no stopping it in an open bed. It just keeps going and going and going, and the people get upset. So, but if you have it contained with a curb or a sidewalk and a foundation on the south side or west side, perfect spot for it. It's a great plant. Almost every English garden that you visit has a sumac in it because they're challenged with fall color in England. They can grow everything else, like it's the weeds, but they don't get good fall color. But sumac is one that gives them good fall color. Annabelle type hydrangea, right? Hydrangea arborescens. So that's what I was saying. With age, they get pretty big and full. And that's a good thing, right? Just plan for it. You don't want to grow perennials in between every one of them, at least not for the long haul, right? Because they're going to do this eventually. And it'll move out. If we just kept killing the grass around here, well, they have edging too, but it would keep moving slowly and it'd get bigger and bigger and bigger, but it's not hard to stop it from doing that. Over this way, guys. For evergreens, I love our junipers, all right? With the planet getting warmer, rain getting, maybe you get it, maybe you don't, drought situations. Last year was horrible for us in Madison. Junipers just laugh at it. You know, they're just like, I don't care. And they're drought tolerant. There's different forms. There's blue forms, there's green forms, there's open, there's tight. Taylor is a very formal. There's shrubby forms, not many of them anymore. There used to, when I first got into horticulture, there's probably 35 different creeping junipers. Now you're lucky if you can find 10 different ones because people don't like them. They're like, they always, you know, they're prickly. I don't like them. Deer don't like them. I think they're great plants, and so I use them when I can, all different forms. But in evergreen and sun, juniper would be my first choice.
Even if it's near a crabapple?
If you use the Chinese juniper, so Juniper chinensis, that it's not the alternate host for cedar apple rust. I don't care. I use them side by side with crab apples. Okay. People complain, like, well, it's got cedar. Like, well, they're beautiful. Look at that orange gelatinous, like, they look like anemones. You know, get over it. It's a native disease. It's not going to kill either one of those plants. This is what viburnum leaf beetle does to a viburnum. This one, it's affected some, but that's the earlier stages, and then this is what happens. Look at this. They're just totally skeletonized, and then they just get stripped.
What kind are those?
That is the cranberry bush viburnum. So viburnum trilobum or viburnum opulus. The trilobum is the native, opulus is the European. They're both, that's what happens.
So you found there's no sprays or anything, diatomaceous earth or anything that...
Oh yeah, I mean, you could spray them with insecticides. I refuse to garden that way anymore. Right? Yeah, oh yeah, if you have a landscaping company, you'd be darn sure that they'll be dousing that with an insecticide every time they come on site. That's what I'm trying to get away with. 35 years ago, I would have been right there, spraying them. And now with my, now I'm like, you know what, that's stupid. What are we doing? Because I consider, arborvitae is one of our best evergreens as well. So Thuja occidentalis, it's native in Wisconsin, probably into Illinois too. There's lots of different cultivars of it. The biggest problem, especially in the last few years, is heavy snow and ice. And that's what you're seeing here, right? They kind of look kind of whimsical, actually. But when you buy arborvitae, I've always bought smaller plants and train them into 1 liter. Okay, oftentimes there's multiple, 3 or 5. When you go to buy it, look for one with as few as possible. A liter meaning, the main trunk. If there's secondary, you don't necessarily have to completely take them out. You can just shorten them and then keep at them over and just let that one become more dominant. And there's cultivars out there that are, if you don't want to fool around quite as much with that form a good central leader. So wintergreen is one that's been around for years. We use that at Olbrich on our hedge around the Tower Garden or Old Rose Garden. North Pole is a new one that came out. And
how do you like American Pillar?
American Pillar, thank you. That's another one. But even those, American Pillar, North Pole, wintergreen, there might be another, there's Malanaya or something like Maloyna. I think it's a country in the not Middle East, but in Ukraine area or something. So it's kind of out there. But anyway, even they might have a couple liters because the nurseries want to just get them full and sell them as quick as possible. So they're not worried about them as much as we are. So anyway, shorten those out, take them out. And then there's the hybrid, have you heard of Green Giant?
Yes.
Or Spring Grove?
Yes.
Those are hybrids between, I'm not sure, I read different things. They're either the Western Arborvitae, Thuya plicata is another one, Western Arborvitae. They do form good central leaders. They're also big trees. They'll get 40, 50 feet tall, 20 feet wide. But the beauty of those as well as keeping a good central leader is that they're deer resistant. I've seen American Arborvitae, just every branch taken off as far as the deer could reach. And right next to it, Thuya plicata, untouched. So it is resistant. I suppose if the deer were super desperate, they might, but so that's the other good thing. Now they need to give us a narrower form. All right, guys, squeeze in here. We're gonna wrap up in about 10 minutes, I think, because I'm getting long-winded and it's almost an hour. And I'll stick around for individual questions after, whatever. So I just wanted to stand here, look around you, especially in that direction, and see how, you know, there's small scale trees, there's shrub understory. The white flower way kind of in the distance is Kyananthus, a white fringe tree that's in bloom, and then in the foreground of that we have a Japanese maple of some sort that's probably died to the ground a number of times with our winters. Serviceberry, but shrubs. So all these different plants, and behind me, here's a beautiful bottlebrush buckeye right here. I was pointing out those tiny ones. They already have the flower buds starting on them. But they tend to bloom in like July, early July, which is a really cool, big white bottlebrush flower. Gets big around. But so here we're in this room, right? We're surrounded, has a different feeling, right, than over in the open meadow, I guess I would call it, more over in that area. So you can use all these different plants to create that. Doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes you might start with just the trees and let them get going a little bit before your budget allows or your time or whatever, and then plug in some other things and some other things. Somebody asked the question, spacing. How do you know how to space these shrubs out? You know, because everybody these days, especially with perennials, put them close together. Let them touch each other, shade the weeds out, you know, in between, and that's how I garden too. But with shrubs, you have to be a little more thoughtful because on that label, or if you do, I like to do a little bit more research than just that label sometimes because they are variable, and honestly, it's hard to say this plant is gonna only get this big or whatever, right? It takes years and years and years and they'll be a lot bigger, but they're doing a general thing for you. So if they say, oh, it ranges, you know, 15 to 30 feet tall or 15 to 25 feet tall and 10 to 20 feet wide. Well, 10 to 20 feet, that's a huge difference, right? How do I deal with that? Well, if you can, go to a botanic garden or arboretum that has mature trees that are similar. It might be a cultivar, but a lot of them are similar, and see what they look like so you have a vision for the future. And then take that into consideration along with the recommendation. So something like apple serviceberry, yeah, it'll get, that's the tree in the foreground here, it'll get 25 feet wide maybe, or 20 feet wide, but if you limit up like they did here, we can grow underneath it. We could grow shrubs underneath it. However, if it were a columnar oak, and it, you know, is going from the base all the way up, or an arborvitae, you know, you don't usually limb up an arborvitae, right? So it's that spacing is more critical or whatever. Some plants can be jammed in closer. If you do a grouping of arborvitae, or I often do this with upright junipers, I put them on 15-inch space, 15-foot spacing on a tree form, but they'll probably get 20, 25 feet wide with age. They can all mass up though, it's okay. You know, I'll still have the single spires, they'll still create a beautiful, you know, landscape for me. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's, if you want to create a shrub border where all the shrubs are touching each other eventually, you know, and take up that space without putting perennials in between, then, you know, you can go by that mid-range or whatever, 8 to 10. I'll do them at 8, do them at 10, it doesn't matter. And they'll touch, and it's okay if they touch. But if you want, like here where we have some trees in the foreground, and then we plant around them, and then we have more of a border in the background, then you might want to, you know, cheat them out a little farther, give them space for the future, and plant around them with perennials. Yeah, and you know, and I tend, even when I do shrub borders, I tend to, okay, these 3/4 of the plants I put in, I know I want to have them for the next 20 years or whatever, right, or 25 years. These other ones, nah, I just want them to fill the gaps for a while. I know they're going to come out, and that's okay. Hell, some of the perennials we buy are as much as a shrub these days, right? It's these proven winners especially. So people always have this thing that says tree, I can't possibly take it out. Yeah, you can take a tree out, you can take a shrub out, it's okay. Nothing will get you. And so, and I, like at Olbrich, there was a couple willows that I often used. One was called rosemary willow, which you can't buy anywhere. I don't know why, it's a great plant. But it grows super fast, beautiful silver foliage. I would grow it in the gaps of slower growing trees or shrubs to fill those spaces soon. I could have done it with ornamental grasses or something too, but then it's more work. And then as they start, then we just get rid of it. Cut it to the ground, dig it out, whatever. So, you know, there's other options that way. So, you know, this is an absolutely beautiful area, right? I mean, I just love coming to Northwind to see what's in bloom here. It's something all the time. And it is shoulder to shoulder perennials, you know, trying not to leave any space for weeds to come in. Of course they do, and you manage them as you do. But when I see this, I see, whew, that's a lot of maintenance. That's a lot to maintain. And so depending on who my client would be, if I had this much space, the first question I ask is, how much do you want to spend maintaining your garden? How much time? Are you doing it? Are you hiring somebody as a combo? But because I can design at all different levels. And if you want less maintenance, then we're going to use more shrubs. We're going to take up, if I did a big shrub planting all in this area, all the border around the edge, do some groupings within the perennials, you know, it would save a lot of maintenance over time, right? Because I think I could only have 1/4 of the amount of perennials here. It could be a beautiful garden, but it'd be a heck of a lot less to maintain, okay? Again, I want both. So anyway, and I just wanted to say,
Plant perennials and you are done.
what's that?
I always thought you plant perennials.
Yeah.
You are done.
Yeah, right. That's what they always, right? Oh, plant perennials, they're the easiest. They're so easy.
Yeah.
It's like, no, that's not true, right? Everything's maintenance. What level of maintenance do you want to incur? So I think the biggest reason there's so much lawn in this country is because it's pretty easy. It doesn't take a PhD to maintain a lawn, right? I didn't say that, she did. She said, "What? That's what your husband's for." And so, but it doesn't take a lot. But if you took away all the chemicals, you took away all the water that we waste, they wouldn't be as popular as they are, right? Because they would be weedy, and they would be brown when they should be brown, and so on and so forth. So anyway, and then I just, when we were in that other space, I felt like there's a certain more intimate feeling, right? Because you were surrounded with taller plants and more, and then this is more open and, kind of like more freeing. And so you can use plants and borders and shrubs and all these things to change that feel. Deer-resistant shrub and trees for sun and shade.
Well, for one, for both.
Yeah. Well, bottlebrush buckeye is one of my very favorite shrubs. I love that it flowers in summer, which not a lot of shrubs do. I like it, I should knock on wood. There's no insect or disease problems that are out there for it right now. The deer don't bother it. So that's one of my favorite shrubs. But that's just a hard question to come up with a whole list of things. And then the small trees, I use a lot of ironwood. So Australia, I use a lot of musclewood, Carpinus, Caroliniana, both native trees which are good drought tolerance, especially ironwood. The viburnums we talked about, dannyberry and blackhaw. I actually wish there were a lot more shrubs available to use. If you really start perusing catalogs, there's not that much. There's 30 different cultivars of Hydrangea paniculata. That sort of thing. It's like they start selling, it's like, all right, let's get another one because we can sell that one, But variety-wise, I kind of work with a triad of wholesale nurseries that do something a little different. Johnson's Nursery in Menominee Falls, outside of Milwaukee, does a pretty good job with the different shrub availabilities. They have more natives than most. They grow in pot, they grow small. I'm not a believer in planting anything big. It costs more, and I just think that it stresses plants out when you plant something big. I've seen it over and over again where we plant a 5-gallon oak alongside a 3-inch caliper or 2-inch caliper, and 5 years later the little one is as big or bigger than the big one, and certainly healthier. Doesn't have cankers and all the things that stress
Can we buy
causes.
from there?
What's that?
Can we buy from there, Johnson's?
Yeah, Johnson's is both retail and wholesale. Yep. They have a good website.
Arborvitae that the deer don't eat, and I didn't get the name.
Yeah, so Thuja plicata, P-L-I-C-A-T-A, plicata. Thuja is Arborvitae the genus, T-H-U-J-A. Often called the Western Arborvitae, and then there's cultivars that are hybrids of that. Green Giant is the most, I even saw it at Home Depot yesterday. I like to go to the garden center, like some of those big boxers, to see what the heck they're doing. At the same Home Depot, they were selling white ash. Oh, who in the hell would sell any ash tree anymore when we have Emerald Ash Borer taking out every ash across the country, and they're selling them? And like, this is why it's such a bummer for people who don't, do the research. They want a garden. They're set up for failure from day one. And then they sold all these peaches and all this crap that there's no way, and Japanese maples that I know won't last for any length of time. So, but they had other things that were good, but you better know what you're buying. So anyway, okay. Thank you.
Thank you.